This is Gemara Baba Kama Daf Chof Beis, and we're picking it up on the bottom of Chof Aleph Amid Beis Tanu Rabbanon. As we continue the discussion which we began in the Mishnah, which was the Kelev and the Gedi, the goat and the kid. No, incorrect. The dog and the goat that fell off the roof, that jumped off the roof, and then they damaged Kalim. And the discussion is, did they fall? Did they jump? Was there negligence on the behalf of the owner, etc.? So we began this discussion in the bottom of the previous daf, and now we continue. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Gemara, HaKelev v'hagidi, a dog or a goat, shedagloi mimata lemaila. This time they're not jumping off of the roof, but rather they're jumping from a lower point to a higher point. What is the halacha? Peturin, the owner is pater to pay. But the opposite, hafoch melmala lemata, then chayavim. Then the owner is obligated to pay. Continues the brisa. Adam v'tarnagol shedalgo, if a human, a person, v'tarnagol or a chicken, shedalgai, that jumped onto a utensil and broke it. Bein melmala lamata, bein melmala lamata, bein lamata lamala, chayavim. In all cases, they are obligated. And Rashi explains, what's the reason that Adam and Tarnagol is obligated in all cases? Says Rashi, Adam inami lav orche likfos mamata lamala chayiv de'ein Adam tzad tamos ella bebehema. When it comes to a person, there's no such thing as a tam versus a muad. A person is always a muad, and therefore you always have to pay full damages. And similar, v'tarnagol darkol idaleg afilu melmata lamala, and a tarnagol is the derech to jump, and therefore the adam will have to pay full damages. Therefore, the chicken has to pay full damages, and there's no differences whether it jumps up or down, etc. Says the Gemara, as we turn over to Chav Beis Amud Aleph, Veha Tanya. But we learned in our brayso, HaKelev v'hagdi, a goat, a kid, that did what? Shedalgai, that jumped b'milmala lemata, b'milmata lemaila. The brayso says, in both cases, Turin, they're potter. And yet we just said a moment ago that no, it depends if it went up to down, down to up. Some are more normal, etc. So explains the Gemara 3 lines down. Chav Beis Amud Aleph Tirguma Rav Papa explains Rav Papa te'apich mipach, that what's going on over here in this brayso that said that they're both pater is where the animal did the opposite. What does that mean? Bekalva bezikira vegadia bisaricha. The dog came down through jumping, and the goat through climbing. And these are the abnormal ways of these animals to climb. Usually, a dog will start inching its way down and only then jump at the bottom, whereas usually the goat jumps right away. And in this brayso, they did not do that. The dog jumped right away, and the goat started inching, so they did not do what was normal for them. And that is the reason why they are pater. In the case of when the case of the Mishnah said that they're going to be chayiv, that's when the animals acted in their normal manner. Says the Gemara, Yachi Amai Pturin. So why are they pater? I understand that it wasn't the normal way, but why are you going to be pater entirely? If it's not the normal damages, it should be tam. It should be a case of a damage the first time abnormally, which we know you pay chatzi nezek. Says the Gemara, ein achanami, it's exactly what we meant. Pater mi nezek shalem, v'chayavim bechatzi nezek. Continues the Gemara 5 lines down, and now we get into the next case of the Mishnah, which is the kelev shanatal charara, the kelev that takes the cake, and on the bottom of the cake is a coal. The kelev goes over to the gadish, the pile of grain, it eats the cake, and the coal lights up the grain. The Mishnah said that there's a difference between the tashlumim obligated for the charara versus the gadish. The charara, said the Mishnah, you pay nezik shalem, it's shein, whereas the gadish, you only have to pay chatzi nezik. Says the Gemara, itmar, we learned in a brisa. Rav Yochanan Amar, now we have a machlokes with the level of damages. Rav Yochanan Amar, or I should say why they're chayiv. Eisha mishum chetziav, v'reish lakish Amar, Eisha mishum mimaynai. Why is the owner liable for the eish that's going on over here? Rav Yochanan says the eish is your arrow. Reish Lakish says the eish is your mammon. Machlokes Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish, exactly why we have the obligation of eish in our case. Rav Yochanan again is saying that the eish is like your arrow. What does that mean? That means it's your koyach. Whereas Reish Lakish says that no, the eish is your mamain, it's your personal property, and which is something, says Rashi, that when you don't watch, you're chayiv for your property damaging. So a subtle difference, but let's understand what's going on over here. For Reish Lakish, my time Rav Yochanan says the Gemara, why doesn't Reish Lakish say that it's like chetziav, like arrows? Amar Lacha, Reish Lakish responds, chetziav mi koychai kazli. Your arrows are your kayach. You shoot an arrow away from you. Hi, loimi koychai kazel. Over here it says Reish Lakish. It's not true. It's not your kayach. How does a fire spread? You put a fire in one dot, on its own it goes and spreads. But it's not your kayach that's causing the fire to continuously move. That's why Reish Lakish does hold of Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan, my time, Reish Lakish. Why does Rav Yochanan hold of Reish Lakish? Amar Lacha, Rav Yochanan responds, Mimayna is be mimasha. Ha, less be mimasha. Says Rav Yochanan, your property, there's mamashas to your property. Whereas over here, when your shalheves, as Rashi explains, damages, there's no mamashas to it, and therefore says Rav Yochanan, the only way you're going to be obligated for eish is because it is your arrows, but not because it is your property. Now that we have the machlokes of Yochanan and Reish Lakish, now says the Gemara, let's understand how they each are going to learn up the din in our Mishnah. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, the dog takes the biscuit with the fire underneath it, with the gacheles underneath it. Says the Gemara, according to Rav Yochanan, so I understand, chetziav the kelevu, it's the arrow of the dog. And that's the reason why the owner is going to have to pay chatzi nezek, because the dog damaged through its force, a form of tzarayrais, of shooting a damager off of the body, and therefore you pay chatzi nezek. But according to Reish Lakish, that says it's your property. Why is the owner of the dog liable at all? It's not his eish. The dog went and he picked up a biscuit and there was a coal stuck underneath it. So why is the owner of the dog obligated? It's not his eish. Reish Lakish. Says Reish Lakish, you know what the case over here that we're talking about is ta'adye aduye, that the dog did not just touch the fire, the coal, to the kama, to the grain, to the wheat, but rather he threw it. He threw the coal. Tal charara, mishalim nazik shalem. Why? Because he ate it. The place where the coal touches, mishalim chatzi nezek, there he's going to pay chatzi nezek. Why? Because it was thrown there. That's called tzarai rice. Val kadesh kula potter. For the rest of it is potter. That's the ish damaging, and it's not his ish. So therefore, you're going to be potter. For Rav Yochanan, and according to Rav Yochanan, according to Rav Yochanan, we can explain the case is different. Not that he threw the charara, that he threw the coal. Rather, he placed it down. Al charara, val makom gacheles, v'shalim nazik shalim. So and he placed the cake down. Al charara, on the cake, val makom gacheles, v'shalim nazik shalim, because that's damaging directly. Valagadish, on that part, Mishalim Chatzi Nezek. Why? Because that's considered his Chatziyov. That's considered his arrows. And therefore, you only pay Chatzi Nezek for the damage done by the coal after it moves away. Kasha number one in Reish Lakish, and Reish Lakish explains a unique ukimta that the dog threw the coal, but Lamaisa, it explains why in the Brisa there's going to be an element of Chatzi Nezek on the Makoim of the Gacheles and a Patur on the rest. Tashema continues the Gemara with a Kasha and Reish Lakish. Gamal, we have a camel, Talon Pishtin, that's carrying flax. And it's walking and the flax off of the animal's back enters in to a store. And the store owner had a candle there, and it lights the flax on fire, which in turn lights up a mansion outside. So again, we have a camel with flax walking in the street. The flax go through the store window, get lit by the fire of the store owner. The camel keeps on walking and lights a fire on a mansion, a house outside. What's the halacha? Says the Brisa, Bal Gamal Chayv. Bal Gamal is Chayv. But let's say the Chanvini keeps his fire outside in the public domain. Then Chanvini Chayiv. Then the Chanvini is Chayiv. Now, this is a very interesting din. Why is the Chanvini Chayiv? Because you leave a fire burning outside, you should watch it. This is actually, we're almost in Hanukkah season. This is the trivia question. Where do we find in Shulchan Aruch a din that you have to watch your ner? It's not in Hilchas Chanukah at all. Hilchas Chanukah doesn't say that you have to watch your ner. Then you have to light the ner. There's no din to watch the ner. Avada, there's many wonderful things brought down about the skula, the kedusha of the nerais. But is there a halacha, black and white, to watch the ner? The answer is no. But when it comes to Choshen Mishpat, here there is a halacha, Chav Beis Amud Aleph. There is a halacha which again brought down in Shulchan Aruch. If you want the Marmakim, you look at the name Mishpat on the side over here. This is in Taf Yud Ches, Sif Yud Beis, Choshen Mishpat. There, the Shulchan Aruch says you have to watch your candle. That's the trivia question for Hanukkah. But back to us. So there, the Chemini is chayav. Why? Because he should have watched the ner. Rav Yehuda Omer says, Rav Yehuda, Bener Hanukkah Potter. Bener Hanukkah, you're Potter. Why B'ner Chanukah you Potter? Because in Ner Chanukah you have the right to keep your light outside. Why? Cause of Persume Nisa. Very nice. Says the Gemara. According to Rav Yochanan, according to Rav Yochanan, we understand why the Baal Gamal is Chayiv. Why? Because it's the arrows of the Gamal that caused the damage, caused the flax got on fire, and then the camel, as it walked by the mansion, set it on flame. This is a case of the Chetziyav of the Gamal, of the Baal Gamal. Therefore, he's Chayiv L'man D'Amar. Eishai Mishum, your Mayna, it's your property. Hi, Eishai. Lama when it's Baal Gamalu. What are you talking about? This Eish is not the property of the Gamal. Amr l'char Reish Lakish responds, Reish Lakish, hacha b'mayaskinon, bim sachseches kol bira kula. The case over here is where the camel didn't just walk by the mansion. It rubbed and it lit the entire mansion. Therefore, it's not considered indirect. It's considered directly damaging by the camel. This is all considered like the makaim of the gacheles. Therefore, the Baal Gamal is going to be chayif. Ask the Gemara, 6 lines from the bottom of Chavez Amar Aleph Yachim Seifa. But at the end of the Mishnah it says, but one second, even if the camel rubbed against the mansion of my chayiv, why is the owner of the store that left his candle outside chayiv? Says the Gemara, no, it means b'sha'amda. It means, doesn't mean he continuously moved. It means he stood still next to the mansion. And the fact that his entire back was on fire from the flax burnt up the entire mansion. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. The camel stood still as the mansion got lit up on flames. Certainly that the Baal Chanvini, the storekeeper, did nothing, and the Baal Gamal should be chayiv. Amar Ravuna bar Manoyach, Mishmei de Rav Ika, on the last line of Chabezim and Alev, Achamay Eskinan. The case is that the camel stopped to use the bathroom. Unbeknownst to the camel, did he have a burning load on its back? That is the reason. And the owner couldn't even move the animal if it tried, because the animal was using the bathroom. And therefore, that's why the Baal Gamal is going to be pater. Now, why is the Baal Chenveni going to be chayiv? We still haven't fully explained, but at least this explains why the Baal Gamal is going to be pater. And with that, we turn over to Chavezim in peace. Continues the Gemara, Reisha, in the first case, Baal Gamal chayiv. Why is the Baal Gamal chayiv? The reason is you shouldn't have loaded up your camel so large, and therefore you contributed to the flax lighting on fire. But seifa, because the candle's outside, you have no right to leave your candle outside, and that's the reason why the Baal Achenvini will be chayiv. Second kasha on Reish Lakish, a second defense of Reish Lakish. We continue on Chav Beis and Beis, the third line, with another kasha on Reish Lakish, who says, Isha misham mimoinai, tashema. We're going to learn it later in Daf Mem Gimel in a Mishnah. Someone sets fire to a stack of grain, and there was a goat, a gedi, that was tied up, and the eved samach loi, and an eved near this pile of grain that you just lit on fire. V'nisraf imai, and the gedi and the eved got burnt up. Chayiv, then he that lit the stack on fire is obligated. But also for, obviously, he's talking about for the gedi as well. Eved kafas loi, gedi samach loi. But on the flip side, if the eved was tied up and the gedi was just nearby, v'nisraf imai, and they're burnt, then pater. Then the one that set a fire to the stack is pater. He's pater both for the stack and for the gedi. Why? The reason why he's pater is because he's chayiv for the murder. Because we have an eved over here that's tied up, and the eved had no way of moving. Therefore, one is obligated, he's going to be chayiv for the act of hariga, the act of murder. And then we have the classical rule of kam le'b'dirab, meaning that anytime you do two things wrong, you get the worst punishment. And therefore, over there, you're going to be pater for the, over there, you're going to be pater for the, for the eved, for the gedi. Incorrect, for the kama, for the grain, and for the gedi. So that's the brisa. So again, we're malik zagadish. In the first case, because the eved was not tied up, you're not considered to be murdering the eved. So if you're chayiv for the grain and you're chayiv for the gedi. In the second case, it's you're chayiv for murder, you're pater for the eved, and you're pater for the gedi, and you're pater for the grain. Now that we have the brisa, ask the kasha and Reish Lakish. 6 lines down. If your ish is your arrows, then I understand that you're pater. That you're pater. Why do we understand that you're pater? Explains the reason being that it's considered straight up murder of the eved, and therefore you're going to be pater for the kama and for the gedi kamle b'deramine. From the contrast, this will be clear. Am I pater? Why are you pater? I don't understand. If your animal killed a slave, would you not also be chayiv for the monetary payments? Meaning, it's not considered that you yourself did it. If your animal goes and does damage, then What do? Halacha is if the animal kills a slave, not only the animal is, you have to pay monetary compensation of 30 shekel. So too, if a fire is like your mammon, it's not yourself, it's not your kayak. It's your mammon, it's your property. It's similar to your animal doing damage. So therefore, it's not going to be considered straight up murder, and therefore there's no kimlei b'dirabinei, and therefore you should be chayiv to make monetary compensation for the eved, for the gidi, for the kama, for everything. Amr l'cha Reish Lakish. So responds Reish Lakish, Hacha Mayaskinan. You know what the case over here is referring to? Where you put the fire on the guf of the eved. Meaning, it's not that you lit up the grain and then the eved was burnt. And then you could say that it's the fire that's damaging, which is my mammon that's damaging, but not to me, myself. No, says Rish Lakish, you took the fire and you put it straight on the body of the Eved. You murdered the Eved. So then, of course, there is Kim Leibid. Says the Gemara, it's pretty extreme. So what's the Chiddush? Of course, you're potter for the Gidi and for the Kama. Of course, it's Kim Le. Says the Gemara, like Tzricha, Begidi Dechad, the Eved Dechad. The Chiddush over here is that they belong to two different people, and this is a chiddush within the rules of Kamle B'Diramine, that even though you're chayiv for murdering one person's item, you'll be pater for monetary damages to someone else's item. And we continue, Tashema, I think this is the fourth kasha on Reish Lakish, about 15 lines to the bottom. The first one in line is the Eved Dechad. Says the Gemara, this is again a Mishnah from later on, this is on Daf Nun Tes. We already had this case quoted once. You send a fire through the hands of a Cheir Shaita V'Katan, Pater Medini Adam, V'Chayiv B'Dinei Shemayim. One is Pater from the monetary compensation B'Dinei Adam, meaning in a regular bezdin you can't be found obligated, but you're Chayiv B'Dinei Shemayim. So says, it's your arrows, Chatziv the Cheirishu. So I understand the story because it's the Cheirish of Katan's arrows, and therefore that's the reason why the owner is going to be Pater B'Dinei According to Mandam that says the Ish is your mom and it's your property. So what's it comparable to? Let's say you gave a shard to the Cheresh, the Shadikatim, you gave them a wild bull. Are you going to tell me, of course not. So then it should be the same thing if you gave them an Ish. Things the Gemara, it's Marala, we learned on this, Amr Reish Lakish, Mishmei de Chizkiya, La Ishanu, Elek Shemasa Lai, Kacheles. What's the case over here? We already had this in Daf Tes, that you gave them a Kacheles, you gave them a call, the Liba, and the Cherishat V'Katan fanned the flame. Avol Masa Lai Shal Heves, Eina Chanami, you'll be Chayav. Why? My Taima, Bari Hezeka, because it's for sure going to do damage. Rav Yochanan Amar, and how does Rav Yochanan respond? He says, "I feel shalavis. You're going to be pater because savar savsa the cherish kagaram la. It's because the action savsa the cherish kagaram. It's the actions of the cherish that caused it. Loi machayva the mostly gavsa silta ushraga. The only time the person that gave it to him is going to be chayiv if you gave him the wood, the slivers of wood, and the flame. That case, that's where the owner is going to be chayiv. But if you gave them a regular shalheves, then it is considered the cheir shaita v'katim that are contributing to the damage, and that's the reason why the owner will be pater b'dinei adam. Stop over here, and we're going to pick it up from Rav on the next year, b'siyata dishmaya.